Greetings, welcome. So now we're starting the second session, which is going to be about Ethiopia. And here we have Claudio Scillero. Actually, let me tell you, the title is called Indigenous Community Engagement and Conservation, the Case of Ethiopia. We have here two wonderful speakers. One is Claudio Scillero, professor in conservation. He's a conservation biologist at the University of Oxford and chief scientist for the Born Free Foundation. He's been working in the Ethiopian highlands for over 3 decades, and today he's going to focus on the One Health approach and how they use highlands to protect endangered Ethiopian wolves and the Afro-Alpine ecosystems. So this is all to manage and control zoonosis that affects people and their livestock as well as wildlife. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Claudio Scillero.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here with you. And I thought it would be useful to start with a little presentation to give an overview. But if I figure out how to make this work, not quite there yet.
Well, in the meantime, I could also just introduce our other guest, as who he is. It's Dr. Boja Duguma, who's a country representative at the donkey sanctuary in Ethiopia. And the reason, just to give you a quick background, I know donkeys are not necessarily wildlife, but they play a big part in the indigenous community, the rural communities in Ethiopia. And because of the crisis going on there, we thought it would be important to bring someone from the donkey sanctuary to talk about the things that are happening in Ethiopia. So Dr. Boja he's presented a lot of papers in equine diseases, and so I'll continue later. So you can.
I wanted to bring a positive view around this based on the work we do in the highlands of Ethiopia, working to protect the very rare endangered wolves and delivering health for the wolves through helping people and helping ecosystems. And this is based on the One Health approach, which combines the needs of human health with animal health and delivering environmental health for benefits of us all. Coronavirus originates from interactions between wildlife and humans and through zoonotic development of pathogens, and that's usually affected by the loss of habitats and the trade on wildlife. And that's similarly, for instance, rabies, which is a very serious disease affecting many people in Africa as a whole, where domestic dogs might transmit rabies to livestock, wildlife, and humans. And with increasing development of agriculture, with more dogs in the landscape, the risks of disease transmission continue to increase. So our focus is on protecting people through dealing with disease transmission, and in doing that, we protect wildlife as well. We're talking about the highlands of Ethiopia, areas above 3,000 meters and above, with subsistence agriculture and pastoralism, and with a very basic subsistence economy that relies on livestock. So losing your livestock or having it affected by disease has serious impacts to the local economy as well. And, it is dogs that tend to be brought into the protected areas and to the mountain ranges to herd livestock that tend to get sick and transmit disease. They are free roaming. They will move freely within ranges where the wolves also occur. And that's where transmission will take place. On the other hand, it's a very nice example throughout the highlands of Ethiopia, that of the coexistence of people endeavor with wildlife. So you often see interactions between wildlife and domestic animals. So our One Health approach has various elements, but the focus on disease surveillance, we need to be alert of new outbreaks taking place both in dogs and the wolves, so that we can intervene and through vaccination protect both dogs and wolves. Clearly, with a very, very small number of Ethiopian wolves or Cancavero surviving in the highlands, we're talking about only 6 populations and as few as 450, 500 adult animals. Each and every animal that might suffer brings an unbearable cost. The second approach involves developing awareness of the risk of disease outbreaks to people and animals, and that's done through overall awareness. And there is a great interest simply because the incredible cost, both in health and financially, that zoonoses such as rabies can have on communities. We organize domestic dog vaccination campaigns. We tend to go to the villages where vaccination takes place, and a few thousand dogs are vaccinated every year. The aspiration of Ethiopia is to eradicate rabies, which costs millions of dollars and takes the life of many people and many domestic dogs every year. But that's a very high aspiration. So we're helping towards that goal through vaccination. And the other thing is responsible dog ownership. So if people are more conscious of the role that the dogs play, we can also help reduce the risk of transmission. And the third leg of this One Health approach is that of environmental health. We need to take care of the planet's health. If we have healthy functioning ecosystems, there is greater productivity and there are benefits for all. So I just want to give you a little flavor of how communities can benefit from approaches that seek to improve that environmental health. There has been human presence in the highlands of Ethiopia for millions of years, since going as far back as Lucy. And agriculture has been present for thousands of years. It's one of the first areas in the world where agriculture developed. So these are very used up landscapes, and some of them are pretty tired. So we need to look at the approaches that can continue to get productivity, but in a sustainable way. So we increasingly refer to these approaches as nature-based solutions. I just want to give you just 2 or 3 examples of work that can be done to help. In this case, we can continue to plow steep, eroded slopes and get a meager product, or perhaps we can look at ways of promoting the growth of wasa, which is this festuca grass that is used for basket weaving and ropes and building, and grow your own garden so that you can get more productivity without hurting the land. You can move from overgrazing on your left to better manage grasslands, where you can continue to have grazing of a small stock, but doing it within the productivity of that particular system. And also we can help women particularly, which are get the burden of bringing firewood to their homes, and reduce the need for firewood using fuel-efficient stoves, which in this case are produced by women's cooperatives and sold at a subsidized price to the community. So having also health benefit on women that don't sit around those fires. And we can look at ways in which, rather than cutting the sato, the Erica forest, we can find other values in the right. This is a bee honey producer that benefits from leaving at least some of those forests intact and produce honey with great energetic value, but also as a cash product. So overall, we like to think of these biodiversity-friendly futures, which are ways of developing the way in which agriculture production takes place, but done that in a sustainable way, which takes into account the needs of everyone. So with the water gardens, with the saving fuel, saving wool stoves, and with production of highland honey, we just have a few examples of things that can be done that help, have direct benefits. They help habitats be restored. They potentially can be sources of income for some of the households, and they have a direct positive benefit on health, particularly women that are the ones that have to raise the firewood and that sit by those fires. It's just a different way of looking at things, but presented under the One Health approach with benefits to all. And clearly, this work cannot happen without having a committed community of people working for this, and that's another source of income that environmental projects can provide through employment of local communities, training, and extension of those benefits to their families as well. So tend to think of conservation not just as something competing with the interests of people, but adding to the basket of solutions we have to deal with the environment, at least in the highlands of Ethiopia. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Claudio Scillero. Now I would like to continue introducing Dr. Boja. Because I started doing it, but I never finished. Dr. Boja has been presenting at so many different conferences all over the world. He's been working with the Donkey Sanctuary and its partners for about 2 decades. He's a strategic leader. He works in program management, partnership management, equine welfare campaigns, and policy advocacy. He's also a guest instructor and member of the board of external examiners, as well as he participates in national and regional forums in Africa, Asia, Europe, and recently in the US and in the Americas. Dr. Boja, if you could just quickly give us an overview of what you do at the Donkey Sanctuary, and kind of just like what Dr. Scillero did, just give us a little bit of an overview of what you do, so then we can get into the other questions.
Thank you, Adey, for the kind words. May I share also a few slides?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I took some. Thank you. So I took some time to explore the relationship, common areas of partnership, and common areas of engagement. So what you see on the right hand is a wild ass, which is endangered species like other wildlife. You also see zebra's habitat challenged by increasing inhabitation of human. And you also see the other donkey, which is threatened, a working donkey, which is threatened by the skin trade. In the middle, you see the relevant stakeholders who can be involved in the wildlife conservation. So if I give you a very general overview of the likelihood of a change scenario, because of increased human population, because of the civil war in Africa, because of the illegal trade. Yes, there is a concern of wildlife conservation today, but I think if this continues as it is, tomorrow we will be concerned about domestic life conservation because it doesn't stop there. And then probably a human conservation, but eventually. But the problem is how can we, who will deal with human conservation if we live at that stage? The point I want to bring is there is no single solution to be left for an institution or a company to solve. We need a holistic, multidisciplinary, integrated working partnership and a collaboration with diverse stakeholders to bring a sustainable impact. So we need to resort to a nature-based solution, which Claudio mentioned as a win-win solution to sustain life and sustain the ecosystem. Many organizations are resorting to the nature-based solution, which in fact, in a sense, means copying from the nature, from the beginning, because today everything is challenged. So saying that, the Donkey Sanctuary is participating at this platform with a good cause. And as to who we are and what we are doing, I will take you to our website. If you see what we do, on the left, on the right lower corner, you find wildlife conservation. So we have a stake and we are not coming from nowhere. We have some engagement already. So, but our main issue is rather of the several issues: donkeys and livelihoods, donkey meat and skin, dealing with feral donkeys, donkeys in tourism, donkeys in industry, and donkeys in disaster. We have also an institutional backup where we have training resources and strategic strategies to deliver, including, for example, advocacy and policy. We are working in our presence in over 38 countries and varying capacity to protect donkeys. Life would be challenging in Ethiopia without donkeys. That's why Ethiopia is leading the world in donkey numbers. We have now about 10 million donkeys in Ethiopia. In the world, we are leading. Agriculture, 80% of Ethiopia are agriculture, and agriculture will be difficult without donkeys. Water access, transport, rural transport is on the back of donkeys, especially at the COVID time when the public transport was challenged. People went back to using saddle horses to access markets. That's why in Ethiopia there's a farmer saying, farmer without a donkey is a donkey himself. It holds also true for woman. A woman without a donkey is a donkey herself. If you see the woman with a donkey and without a donkey, you can appreciate the quality of life of both women. This is in the urban areas, in rural areas, but also in urban areas. We see there are over 1 million donkeys working in the urban areas, transport, pulling carts, which means there are millions and hundreds and thousands of households in the urban areas of Ethiopia who depend their livelihood on donkeys. 250 cart horses and 32,000 cart mules. So the livelihood of most of the Ethiopians, because this is like a self-employment opportunity. If we see what the Donkey Sanctuary is doing in Ethiopia, one of the things we have been working, apart from the Donkey Sanctuary, working in the UK, in Ethiopia is modeling an integrated community-based intervention, where we found health is not a single, there is no single solution. Healthcare is not a single solution. Community education cannot bring change by itself. Harness improvement, school education, awareness raising, advocacy. So we integrate this in various communities and brought a social behavior change and change the attitude of the communities and of course the practices to improve donkey welfare. What we are proposing from our experiences of working in communities is how we can probably model a livelihood opportunity for wildlife conservation for communities. We also had a school education program where we molded the attitude of the next generation as a social behavior change agent, because it's as the next generation. So we had raised awareness and introduced successfully the need of introducing animal welfare education in schools in the curriculum and as well as in the co-curriculum. And we also had scouts. So from this, what I am asking is wildlife conservation harnessed in the school curriculum? I don't know how much. We also did in the academia, where we revised the national curriculum and introduced 2 courses in animal welfare and eco-medicine, which was introduced at Saba University, and then was then mainstreamed into the various veterinary schools across the country. So do we have wildlife medicine, for instance, in the national curriculum? If this is something to learn from us. The last one is advocacy and policy influencing. As I said, we have issues of skin trade, issues of skin trade in the middle. But in the left corner, you see the working donkeys, millions of working donkeys and working mules, where they are not harnessed in the national development. So we are asking for policy and strategy inclusion in the as a development asset in the national development package. And in the right corner, you find the wild ass and zebras, endangered wild species. So as I said, policy and strategy inclusion of working ecos in national development. So we are based on the set of SDG targets, working ecos as essential instruments to help countries achieve their SDGs. So donkey is transporting some of the SDGs. If you think of the illegal skin trade, this is what we are struggling and what we hope are achieving now in curbing the illegal skin trade with thefts, bush slaughtering. The problem is the demand outweighs supply, because they are slaughtering in mass, in millions, and the donkeys are breeding slowly. There are also environmental and biosecurity issues associated with skin trade. Poor holding stations in some of the slaughterhouses in Kenya. So as I said, measures to curb the trade, we have as an institutional, strategic and tactical means, including campaign, social media. We did the first stakeholder forum in Ethiopia with the title of Protecting the National Donkey Herd. And we also produced Under the Skin, where we have summarized the activities around the world to curb the trade in a booklet, and that is available online. So potential to campaign against the illegal trade, altogether with the wildlife conservation. And regional international, we also do, as I said, regional international networking in animal welfare, in the SDGs, as to how these animals can be recognized and visualized in the SDG development. That's what we are doing. And one question I have is, what is our theory of change, and what's the theory of change in wildlife conservation? This is a question I always ask myself. I was saying, if I find a person or institution working in wildlife conservation, what is the theory of change? Conserving wildlife for ecotourism, and therefore conserve the ecosystem, or discover conservation of wildlife in the effort to conserve the ecosystem? Thank you, Adey. Off to you. Back to you.
I'm unmuted. Thank you so much. Actually, surprisingly, all the questions that I have, you covered it. So I'm going to have to come up with more questions. And I do have, and this is pretty moving. I've actually read about this situation in Ethiopia about the donkeys, but I've never actually seen pictures. What you just showed is very shocking, and I hope people will wake up, and this will be curbed really fast. Anyway, let me go back to Claudio, and then come back to you again. I just wanted to see if you can talk about your interaction with the community with regards to behavior change, and what kind of, first of all, describe the behavior, the bad behavior, and how to what is your plan to change that? When I say you, I mean your organization. And I hope, and I'm sure at some point we're going to cover Nsasakote also.
Yes.
Or you can put it in if you...
Thank you, Adey. The Ethiopian Wolf Conservation Program, which is the main project I'm involved with in Ethiopia, is a collaboration with the Ethiopian government, with the regional governments, with the University of Oxford, with our donors, such as the Born Free Foundation. We couldn't really do that work without the support of people that haven't even ever been to Ethiopia, but they care about Ethiopia and their wildlife and their communities, and they therefore contribute generously. So it's very much a collaboration. It is interesting to see the tensions that build up for access to resources, and that's not unique to Ethiopia. For instance, the government has well-established national parks. Two of them known internationally, the Bale Mountains National Park, Simien Mountains National Park, that is a UNESCO site. The local communities can see national parks as opportunities because there might be employment, there might be tourism that generates a new industry and all that. But they mainly see it as a competitor for access to land. So if there is a national park and there is wildlife, therefore your ability to go and graze your animals or collect firewood are somewhat restricted. So managing those conflicts for access to resources between government structure that's trying to protect through enforcement and local communities that are trying to make a living is always going to be key to success. And that's why these nature-based solutions that Boja and myself alluded to bring a glimmer of hope, because we can develop things not one against the other, but working together. And you can look around, particularly in central Ethiopia, and realize that that perception that resources can be accessed and utilized sustainably has always been there. And based on that, the work of some colleagues together with communities in Mens, in Northern Shoa, for instance, have rescued the collective memory about community-based systems to manage wasa, which is this festuca grass issue. This is the old bylaws called Kero that allow the elders and the leaders of the community to discuss access to resources. So they will, through no intervention of government authority whatsoever, they will agree which areas could be grazed. They will agree which areas the grass could be harvested seasonally. And in doing that, they allow the productivity to be maximized. So we see a return to some of these traditional bylaws that allow sustainable use by communities. And I think that is what I really like about community conservation attitudes. Of course, if you allow everyone to help themselves, it's a free-for-all system, and resources tend to suffer, and productivity declines, and people suffers as well. But when you see this self-organization at Kavele level, really, at the grassroots, and enforcement and people respecting what is agreed communally, then that is a very strong platform to move forward. In addition to Mens, where this traditional community area has been operating for quite some time now, we have Borena Saint in South Wollo, which is a community conservation area. So they really it might combine efforts with regional government and with federal government in some of the operational aspects. But ultimately, it's the communities that gain the responsibility to access and to manage the resources. And ecotourism, for instance, it could be an additional aspect of that. The increasing productivity of grass, growing honey, growing some non-traditional products. Apples, for instance, has been another alternative. So we see ways in which communities can continue to practice traditional agriculture, but doing it in a way that is more sustainable and brings benefits to wildlife as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Claudio. And so using the same question, Dr. Boja, you've kind of covered it in your presentation, but socially in Ethiopia, donkeys have they're the bottom rung anyway. They don't have a good I don't want to say reputation, but you kind of like that. So have you tried with your work to kind of change the attitude of people about, donkeys are used every day, and yet in all at least in Amharic and in all our conversations, we talk about donkeys as if they're like not good, although we know they're good. They're part of our daily lives. So is there any movement, I don't know, through radio, TV, to kind of change people's attitudes? Because these are economically, they're very, very important, and their numbers are going down drastically. So has there been any efforts to influence socially about the views on donkeys? And donkeys, actually, horses have a better reputation.
That's a good question, Adey. I think the major, the central, the root cause of donkey welfare is much to do with lack of attitude, negative attitude, poor attitude, social stigma. They are considered as a metaphor of insult. There are more myths, more negative thoughts and negative saying in communities about donkeys. So if, as we are a donkey welfare organization, so the first thing to tackle is to bring a social behavior change to deal with the negative attitude. But there is no single answer to just bring the negative attitude that is ingrained in communities overnight. It took us time, it took us money, it took us really huge effort, and use of different platforms from the community, from the community priests in the community, scouts, people who can be role model in the communities, to help us to use them as change agents in the community to bring change. So we have developed an integrated community-based model where we have identified social impediment, technical impediment, and institutional impediment as three pillars for improving donkey welfare. It is easy to bring institutional changes, probably much easier to bring some institutional changes, and also technical empowerment with service providers. But the main important change indicator is bringing a social behavior change in communities, bringing the attitude of community. And that we were successful. People were not happy to take their photograph with a donkey in the beginning when we started the operation. But the end of the 5 years program in Tigray, Amhara, and the south, they were happy to hold and to hold donkeys and to handle donkeys and to take picture with donkeys as their hero. They also asked us to change their name from donkey to Belletech. I don't know what you say. Because the thing is to do with the donkey. As long as the name stays there, the belief stays with us. So change the name of the donkey, and then it is easier to bring change. So we did produce a model where we can sell that model to communities using donkeys and then improve their welfare. We really did change the attitude and the practices of in communities where we worked last 10 years or so.
Thank you so much. Last but not least, if you could both cover a little bit about the government from federal or national level, how easy it is to influence policy change when you see something that's not working. How fast does it react with regards to donkeys, as well as with the cake abaro and the other animals, which I hope we will be able to talk about.
There's always been an agency responsible for wildlife conservation in Ethiopia since the mid-80s, when I first started working there. So there is a political interest and there is a technical know-how. But my impression is that it has never been a priority higher up in government. So these agencies lack teeth to be effective with what they do. They lack proper budgets, and as a consequence of that, they tend to lose some of the human capital. That people might lose their patience and move on to other ventures. So for as long as there is no a concerted effort to put the environment and wildlife conservation at the center of the national agenda, we're going to continue to struggle. So it is through these proposals that present wildlife conservation not as a either or. You have to stop developing so you can protect wildlife, and change into a more positive win-win approach, such as, for example, One Health or nature-based solutions, where politicians can see benefits from engaging with environmental causes, so that will reflect positively in them, and it will reflect also on the sheet balance when it comes to generate wealth for the country. So I think the potential is there. The challenges are many, but it depends on our ability as a community concerned with environmental conservation across Africa to reach out to policymakers to understand that there is also benefits to be accrued for the nation as a whole if the environment is taken into account. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we will come out of this COVID pandemic with a new view of how things can be done, and perhaps we can learn to be less wasteful in the way we use resources, and we can take the long-term view. And rather than getting a benefit now, just learn to be patient and look at models that will deliver if we take that long-term view. So we have to keep working, and people like you that has the ability to put together these events, and all of us, we have to continue to talk to policymakers and to help them come over to our way of seeing things.
I agree. And Dr. Boja, before we get to we have 5 minutes. So.
Thank you, Adey. That's a critical question, I think, and winding question. What we are doing with national governments, and we are working with the Ministry of Agriculture and also other stakeholders, the academia and development partners, because donkeys, mules, and horses are not recognized in the National Development Package. What we understood is that policymakers need evidence. They also need working models to help them include in the, because they are there anyway for communities. If there are alternatives for example, for rural development, women empowerment, and also donkeys and working equals values in self-employment for poverty reduction, governments need this. But what is missing now, what we are currently working really hard, is to prove policymakers in how what is considered as not future, because this time, because of urbanization, because of mechanization pressure, because of various factors, these animals do not have place in the national development. So we are developing or collecting evidence. For example, what is the role of donkeys in water access? What is the role of donkeys in donkeys, horses, and mules, working animals in the transport sector? What is their share in rural development, in women empowerment? So if once we know this and also find ways of including in sustaining livelihoods where these animals are relevant, then it is much easier to include them in the National Development Package, and of course bring a sustainable welfare improvement because their value is recognized. And that's what we are doing, and with some 8 SDGs, because we know that they will be of value in many of the community setting to help them meet the SDG targets.
Thank you, Dr. Boja. So we're going to jump into the questions from the audience, but before we do that, we have maybe 3 minutes. Claudio, if you could just talk about Nsasakote, and I've never actually physically been to Nsasakote, but I've wanted to every time I go to Ethiopia, and I've sent so many people to go see it, and I know all the animals by name, so even though I've never seen them. So if you could just talk about that and then we'll jump into the questions from the audience.
Nsasakote is an animal sanctuary that was built in the outskirts of Addis Ababa to the west, near Holeta, and is very much the brainchild of the Born Free Foundation, which, in order to provide shelter for some animals that have been abused in captivity and some animals that have been victims of illegal wildlife trade, such as cheetah cubs, lions, and baboons and other primates. They built this place. It was thanks to a partnership with the former president of Ethiopia in land that was formerly owned by the Ministry of Defense. And the interesting thing, there are very clear benefits to those fortunate animals that found haven, where people look at them and allow them to carry on their lives without having to endure further suffering. So there are parallels with what Donkey Sanctuary does in that regard. But it's interesting also the impact that it has had in the community around as a whole, because you could see from a distance, it's a fairly large area where the sanctuary is. It's a lush green and a lot more productive than some of the tire barren land around it. So immediately you see that by protecting that area to give shelter to the animals, we're also protecting the local ecology. The community is engaging through employment, through provision of services and so on. And that's an opportunity for us to reach out through education. So we have educational programs where children from the local community can come to our educational center, and that's an opportunity for us to talk about environment and the use of resources and wildlife as a whole. So it's a very nice holistic approach to conservation while taking care of the animals. So for Born Free and for me and for many other people, every animal matters. We have to be humane. We have to be compassionate in the way we engage with the world. And by looking and caring about each and every single animal, if we can, then we deliver on that expectation.
Thank you. So the first question is, as part of the measure to curb the skin trade, don't you think this issue could be raised to the level of the AU, especially to stop transboundary sales? That's for Dr. Boja. Do you want me to repeat it?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So they say, as part of the measure to curb the skin trade, don't you think this issue can be raised to the level of the African Union, especially in order to stop the transboundary sales of donkey skin and I guess live donkeys also?
Yes. Not only at the African Union Commission, Inter-African Bureau for Animal Resources, this has been raised to the international arena in the EU, the OIE, the FAO, many organizations, development organizations, the UN platforms. This issue have been raised and dealt with. The problem in the beginning was it was difficult for member countries to agree because some of them see as a trade opportunity, some of see because they don't see a long-term impact, and frankly speaking, some of them had trade ties with the Chinese, the host country, and then it's difficult for them to bargain because even this trade was introduced not based on investment theories, market theories. It's just government to government, state to state, like Chinese to state, African state, member state relationship. But once it started, because it is involved with illegal and also the money attempts made in many countries and the failure of the trade, because it consumes more donkeys, and donkeys are not bred, and research also shows that through modeling, it is difficult to make the trade feasible because farming, it's thought to be that farming should replace donkeys of farmers. But they are using farmers' donkey, and in many countries the trade started and stops after they learn, with difficult scenario, and that's why although we raised to the AU, IBAR, the EU, the Donkey Sanctuary advocacy team, the Donkey Sanctuary, and also the other organizations working in this regard have raised at various platforms. And I think they are successful now in curbing the trade because the Kenya, being one of the host country, is now no longer slaughtering donkeys, so there are no donkey live trade, and we hope that would be sustainable with the monitoring of these AU, IBAR, and many other member countries. So it has already been raised to that stage.
Okay. Well, the second question is, this is for both speakers. The education and participation of local communities are definitely important. Do you think there's a role for the diaspora communities? And to that, I also want to add, my personal question is, how about also educating I guess you would call them the consumers, like the countries in China, raising awareness, not educating the consumers, people in China and people in other Southeast Asian countries, to kind of raise their awareness. What do you think?
Do you want me to go first?
Yes.
Any interest that Ethiopians living abroad would have on community involvement and environmental protection in Ethiopia will be fantastic. Because of your experience, by having lived and experienced other places, but also your networks, your contacts, your ideas, all that could and should feed back. equally important, any resources that could be channeled to support initiatives. I mean, we're not talking about big organizations that have access to resources, but we have many grassroots organizations in Ethiopia that are trying to do their work, but they are very, very limited into what they can achieve because of resources. So linking up the diaspora with people of similar interest back in Ethiopia and develop a two-way, it will be fantastic. Also because it will help people feel valued for what they do. If you have your fellow country people coming or engaging with you and showing an interest in what you do, I mean, something good has to come of that. Yeah, I encourage your and I applaud your approach and your interest on this, and with so many Ethiopians living all around the world and leading very successful lives and being great scientists and academics and professionals, we have to get them to focus back on Ethiopia and help in any way they can.
Thank you. And Dr. Boja? The role of the diaspora, people outside of Ethiopia in this.
Yes, and also dealing with the Chinese,
Yes.
And other Southeast Asian countries. Yeah.
Yes, as you said in the beginning, education, awareness raising to the level of probably even advocacy, policy advocacy for national, regional, and international. Raising awareness is really important because it is people do what they do based on the knowledge they have. If we raise the knowledge about what we're doing, about how these animals are useful, about how skin trade is harmful, about a holistic approach, then people will learn and engage. And community empowerment is central to sustainability. If we invest in communities, we never go wrong, and the sustainability starts from communities. And communities prioritize livelihood. So if we are working in communities and sustaining their livelihood, whatever does that contributes to the empowerment of communities will get away. So if diasporas are involved in community empowerment, especially with the wildlife, with the ecotourism, Ethiopia is, I think, one of the countries endowed with endemic life, their wildlife, where ecotourism is one of the big industry. I think diaspora can play directly or indirectly in advancing, in promoting our ecotourism industry. Regarding raising the awareness and dealing with the skin trade supply chain, call it a value chain, the Donkey Sanctuary has been doing across Africa, across Asia, and across many countries, and also dealing with traders who are consumers, who are also traders of not only the skin, but what they produce is hijau. So who are trading hijau. So they dealt with big organizations like eBay, like Amazon, because these are the big institutions who are dealing. Can you help us? Because what you are selling is really devastating, ruining communities in Africa who are really in danger of poor poverty. So by raising that, they gained some momentum of dropping commodities, trading commodities that contains hijau product. So the Donkey Sanctuary has also presence in China, working with them, helping them with the milk, donkey meat, and also donkey skin, because donkey skin is still there. And that's a sovereign country, so all you can do is to support and to guide them and to share experiences and raise awareness in a way that donkey welfare is protected. So that presence and involvement and engagement is there with the donkey sanctuary. With that, we are also bringing impact, and they are accepting. There is partnership between Chinese companies and the donkey sanctuary.
Thank you. I think we're actually 1 minute over time, and I thought I kind of knew that we're going to keep talking. But thank you so much, both of you. This has been amazing. It's been a learning experience for myself, and I'm sure for many others. And I hope we continue to do this again. So we're going to jump off to the next session now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claudio.
Good to see you all.